I remixed Illegal by PinkPantheress into a club track in 4 hours, and this is how I did it. So I really loved the original. It had this kind of garagey, early 2000s R&B vibe to it. But I wanted to create something that would keep the original essence of the track, but turn it into more of a dance song. So I dragged the original into Logic and started out with the stem splitter, and then just started dragging in drum samples from Splice. Started with the kick. I wanted something that was very clubby, very punchy. Then I added a 909 hat. And the hat is an interesting one. So about a year and a half ago, I got on a tutorial call with Darby, and he said one of the key things that he looks out for is making sure that the drums are super tight. So that's exactly what I've done here. Without the hi-hat being shortened, it sounds quite a long tail on the hi-hat. So I've just shortened it so that it's over before the next kick comes in. I think that just adds a little bit more pump and groove to the track. Very minor change, but it does make quite a big difference. Added an offset hat. Just keeps the hats interesting. And I've swung these manually. So I've just gone through and I've just moved them from. The snare is the original snare from the track. So like I say, I wanted to keep the essence of what was already there. So I've not changed that. Then I added these swung hats underneath. And again, these are all manually swung off the beat. So when you have the kick. I listen to a lot of A-Trip, and he does stuff like this a lot. It makes the whole beat of the song groove a lot more. And then the final thing that I've added is this garage percussion. Then obviously crash. And that's it for the drums. What I've then done is I've then bussed them into a drum effects bus, and throughout the track there's some automation. So for example, in the build-up, you hear the drums disappear. And it's just to build that anticipation for what's about to come. And just doing it in a drum bus just makes it way easier rather than doing everything individually. So we've got high cut frequency and a volume automation. And that's mostly it. The drums lead almost everything in the track. Because it's a remix that I want to see played in a club, I've tried to keep the drum track throughout so that it gives people something to dance to. Next, we have the vocals. I just soloed everything, listened to the originals, and tried to find a phrase that I thought would work well underneath everything in the drop.
Oh, I should name it, oh, I should call you.
And I thought this phrasing was really nice.
I should name it, I should name it, I should name it, I should name it.
Then took that and duplicated it.
I should name it, I should name it, I should name it, I should name it.
Put some heavy sidechain on with the beat breaker from Logic. Obviously EQ'd it.
I should name it, I should name it, I should name it, I should name it.
And just repeated that. And then the same thing for the second half of the vocal. That is from this section.
I've saw it quite a few times with paranoia.
And with the drums built out, this is what I had so far. And I wasn't sure where I wanted to go with the drop. I wasn't sure whether to go more melodic or more bass heavy. I decided to go more melodic because I felt like it fit the original track. And like I said, I wanted to keep that essence the same. So once I had the vocal, the next part was the chords. So I really liked the original chords, didn't really want to change much. Just need to get rid of the bass with the channel EQ and then sidechain them. So I have that in the verse, and then for the build-up, just take off the sidechain. So the drop chords, again, it's the same original chords. All I've done is just process them slightly. So this is the original. EQ'd them. And then I've used Logic's tremolo to add that stuttery staccato effect. Symmetry is quite low. Longer it'd sound like that, but I wanted it to be kind of staccato-y. So just played around with that. It felt like it lacked a little bit of energy, so added an OTT. Really adds a lot of punch to it, and then again, sidechain. Next, I put the song through Paul X Stretch, which if you don't know is basically a plugin that just extends out a song without having artifacts. It's actually the first time I've used Paul X Stretch in a song. This is what it gave me to start. That's what's really nice about Paul X Stretch, is it creates these really beautiful, ethereal, ambient sounds that kind of sound like pads. But again, it ties it into the original. So I took this sample, cut it down into a nice short element and some reverb. Again, back on the tremolo. And then the sidechain. And then what happens with that is that just sits underneath the entire track, basically. So it sits underneath the chords. Which just adds this really nice texture to it. And then even throughout the track, as you can see, it's everywhere. So here it's not got the sidechain on it in the build-up. And then in the second build-up, I've just turned off the tremolo because I felt like it needed that choir feel to it. As I was listening to the build-up, I thought a choir would be nice, so I added a choir. And that just sits underneath everything. You can't really hear it. It ties in with that ethereal idea that you get in the build-up and I guess throughout the track, and you know that you're coming to the drop. So the bass is basically the same. It's the same bass line as the original. The only thing I've done is use an 808 bass from Serum, typed it in manually, listening to the song, compressed that quite heavily, bounced that out, as you can see here, cut out all the clicks, sidechained it again so that it's not hitting on the kick, because the kick does have quite a strong low end, and that's mostly it, to be honest. And then that bass line is the same throughout the song. The only time where it's not that is I've added this respace in the build-up because I don't want to get rid of the bass completely, but I don't want it to be the same kind of pumpy bass line that we have when the drums are on. Then we have multiple effects here. When we play the drop, there's not a huge amount going on. Got some white noise down, got some lasers, and then a few rises. But the majority of the effects are in the build-up. These are mostly just samples. I was going through Splice and I thought they sounded good. Normally I would try and make my own, but I felt like in this case, these work well. And that's mostly it for the track. It's very straightforward. As I say, the drums lead everything. So that's why you can see them throughout the entire track. Obviously the vocal is a key anchor point that if you know the song, you'll sing along. And I did this all in about 4 hours after work, and I was pretty happy with how it was. The main thing for me was that I wanted to try and act fast while the trend was going on. So the next day I came in the evening and I tried to do a mix down. Essentially what I've done is made track stacks for each of the individual elements. We've got vocals, drums, instruments, bass, and FX. The vocals, I've got very, very little processing on them, just a slight compression. The vintage VCA recommended by ChatGPT, and it was a great recommendation. The drums, I don't have a saturation plugin, so I just use Logic's Exciter. This is what it sounds without. Just adds a little bit of power in the high end. Then I've compressed it slightly, just to glue it all together, and then EQ'd out some of the highs. Instruments, again, not really done. I've not even EQ'd them as a bunch. Again, a little bit of compression just to glue them together using the vintage VCA. Bass, again, not much really going on. The FX, don't have anything. So, and then what I've done is I've taken all of those track stacks and routed them into another bus that I've called the mix bus. And when I was mixing down, I tried to gain stage everything properly, but I felt like it ruined the energy of the track. And so I just did something that they always tell you not to do, which is don't put everything into a mix bus and just turn that down, because you're going to have things that are clipping. But in this case, I thought it sounded good. I couldn't really hear any of that clipping. I wanted to keep the energy, so I just put it through a mix bus, turn it down with the gain by 12 dB, and then that gave me the final track that was ready to master. As I say, it took me 4 hours after a work day. I just got in the flow with it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. If you don't know who I am, my name's Harry. I DJ and produce under the name HYAX. I'm also the creative director at McGill Productions, which is a video production company in the UK. If you're interested in music or music breakdowns, I'll be posting more on this channel, or aiming to post more on this channel. If you're interested in filmmaking, music, photography, follow my Instagram page. I post all sorts of stuff on there all the time. You can stream the song on YouTube now on my channel, and if you would like to download to have it in your library, the link is in the description. That's it. More to come in the future. Nice one.